Garlic bread is my favorite food. I could honestly eat it for every meal. Or just eat it all the time without even stopping.
You get fat.
No, why would I get fat?
Bread makes you fat.
Bread makes you fat?
Hello, and welcome to The Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today we're going to be taking a small trip back in time, but an important one.
Yeah.
Something that is close to my heart and yours.
Absolutely.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Mm-hmm.
Or
just Scott Pilgrim.
Scott Pilgrim.
The franchise.
Because it is not called that way in the books, in the comic books.
Versus the World is Volume 2.
Yes.
Yeah, Volume 1 is Precious Little Life. Which was originally one of the names that they considered for the film.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like Scott Pilgrim
versus the World is such like a catchier
it's
title.
It's so catchy, you know? Like, it's just like, yes, of course. But, I mean, Scott Pilgrim versus the Universe would be an also great one. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So let's talk why Scott Pilgrim is important and why we're talking about it today.
Yeah. So I would say the first question is, did you get into the comic or the movie first?
I was a movie guy because I'm an Edgar Wright fan, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and then you say Edgar Wright's doing a movie where he's not with his normal cast. He's not with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, you know? Like, and you're kind of like, well, I'm interested.
Yeah, I think it might have been a Jeremy Johns review or something where it's just like, if you love video games and this type of sense of humor, you're going to love this movie. I'm like, this seems really interesting. Saw the trailer. I'm just like, this seems like nothing I've really seen before.
Right? You're like, is that a video game movie?
And I remember specifically back when it came out, it was actually a double date.
Yeah?
It was like me and my girlfriend at the time, her brother and his girlfriend at the time. We went to two separate movies because we both wanted to go to the movies, but we wanted to see two different things. They wanted to see The Expendables. We wanted to see Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, they chose wrong.
Yes, absolutely. We came out of Scott Pilgrim just like, that was fantastic. I don't think I've ever seen a movie that got me so much. Like, this movie gets me so hard. And they came out The Expendables like, dude, our movie was awesome. It's like, no. Our movie was awesome.
It's true. And that's the thing. I think you say it right there is Scott Pilgrim gets me.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's weird. Some of the humor not only, like, makes me laugh, but, like, cuts me to my core. You know, like the garlic bread line, like them being like, garlic bread makes you fat. Like, that is literally me at, like, me. You know, like, you're just like, yes, wait, hold on. Garlic bread's bad for you? Wait.
So, yeah, I had also seen the film first. Then immediately after, I'm just like, well, it's a comic.
Yeah, right?
Have to have it.
Have to have it. I also read the comic after the movie years later, though. It wasn't because I was a huge fan of the movie and definitely like watched the movie again and again and again. And then finally got to the comics when we were into comics back in 2011.
Yeah, it would have been 11.
And I think that's when I first read it. And I really... It's like the book is so great. That's the thing.
Yeah,
it's such a great starting place. How could you not make a great movie from this? You know,
yeah, and it's a very different sort of beast.
Yeah, it is.
So the interesting thing about the books versus the movie, and I love it when situations happen like this just because it's so interesting, and I love to see people who are obsessed with like adaptation accuracy try to have their head spin trying to grasp it. The film was in the early stages of development, kind of right after Volume 1 came out.
Really?
They looked at it as just like, this would be a great movie. Let's do it. Let's get Edgar Wright on it. And it kind of went like on and off development for about like 5 years.
Wow. I didn't know that.
So at a certain point, because they were going back and forth, it's like, oh, let's write a new draft. And they kept bringing on Brian Lee O'Malley for oversight. So the film and the comic kind of influence each other.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Because they feel like they breathe from each other.
Yeah.
You know, like they feel like they know each other exist. And if you didn't know that they were made at the same time.
But they were kind of being made at the same time. The only other situation that's kind of close to that would probably be 2001. Where, like, the book was being made at the same time as the movie. Is sort of like a multimedia project.
Yes.
And it's super interesting. It had gotten to the point where Edgar Wright's first choice for Scott was Michael Cera because he was a big fan of Arrested Development.
Yeah.
When they first started development of it, he wasn't old enough for the part. But because they took 5 years to develop it, he had finally come of age for him to be cast.
Because he's a baby in Arrested Development.
Oh, yeah.
Like, in those first couple seasons, he's such a baby. And you're kind of like, when you see him, you're like, whoa!
So, yeah, it's interesting. Like, there are choices made in the film that, like, Brian Lee O'Malley would consciously go against for the book just to make it different, and vice versa. So you have this really interesting project that you can't really argue accuracy for.
You can't be like, oh, this adapted it well. Like, because
exactly.
it's a different beast. And that's why it's interesting that we also have a third adaptation we have to talk about here. We have the video game.
The game.
So I feel like we're not being well-rounded unless we talk about all three kind of at the same time.
I would start with the... Yeah, we could jump back and forth.
Jump
but
back
I'd like
and
to
forth.
start
But
with the
you
comics
have to,
specifically.
We have to establish that this is a 3 adaptation thing, and I feel like you have to take all 3 adaptions just as seriously as each other because they're all influenced by Brian Lee O'Malley.
Yeah,
and they all kind of have Edgar Wright's touch on them. You know,
so
like
the book had first started in 2004.
Yes.
So you do the math. 5. That's about kind of came. It had its reception. The studio got their hands on it. It's just like, we need this. And then the film came out in 2010.
Yeah.
So not only was the film being developed at the same time the comic was still ongoing, but the film went into production before the final volume was released. Like, they were starting to shoot before the last volume had released.
And you don't get a Game of Thrones situation here.
Yeah. Which is amazing because Game of Thrones had at least a head start.
Yeah, right? At least a little bit.
Yeah. But it's interesting to compare the two. I had reread the series specifically for this since it had been a long time since I have read it.
Yeah.
And just noting the sort of differences. What's interesting to me is that the book is most of the time more slice of life than the film tends to be.
Because it starts that way.
Yeah.
I feel like the first book, that's why it's interesting that they said, like, let's make a movie out of this book. Because the first book's very, like, Scott doing things. Like, you know, like, definitely the movie and the book start the same way with them describing him dating Knives Chow. That's almost scene for scene.
The film
it's
is,
like the film and that opening are like
the film is like almost slavishly faithful to that first volume.
Yeah.
It has a lot of stuff from 2 and 3 as well. After that, it starts to like go
Be
in
like,
different
woo!
places. Yeah, it starts to get loose after that.
Start to get loosey-goosey.
But it's interesting to see like the different characterizations. Like, one of the things that I noted reading the book again and then going into the film is that despite being a film versus a comic book, I find that the film is
more comic book,
is more over the top.
Yeah, like it is. It's
like
it's
the,
more
the
like
acting, the characterization,
and I feel like that's very Edgar Wright.
Yeah,
I feel like that because he wants to bring it to that big cinematic like conclusion, and that's kind of not the way the book goes. You know, like it's not. It definitely comes to a conclusion between Gideon and him, but it's not like a big like final fight and then he fights Nega.
Yeah,
it's
everyone seems to be just more like hypercharged,
and
a little more emotive. Like one of the bigger differences to me is like Steven Stills as a character.
Yeah.
In the book is kind of just a chill dude, super pragmatic. Like, he wants the band to get together, but he's really focused about it. Kind of monotone, just kind of a gruff dude.
And in the movie, he's so worked up.
In the movie, he's just constantly searching for validation. He's just kind of pathetic, and it's hilarious.
I love Steven. I think it's one of my favorite like things that they like slightly changed for the movie is that he's so nerve-wracked the whole time.
In the same way that like Knives is a little more over the top because she's a little more like really puppy love stuff.
Yeah.
Knives in the book is
almost
just
realistic.
Yeah, she's just kind of finding herself.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, in the book, she tends to have a lot more agency because the book gives her more time to develop than the movie could. And there's even little stuff like Ramona even.
Ramona has a lot more screen time in the books. I feel like Ramona in the movie and the books are almost completely different beasts. And it's not a bad thing. It's just different.
And I find that Ramona is a little more aloof and a little colder to people in the movie than she is in the book.
Because in the book, she's just like a magical girl.
Yeah,
like,
in the book, she's like aloof to start, but becomes like a genuine part of the crew.
Exactly.
She gets along with everyone except Julie because everyone hates Julie.
That's part of the book, you know, like is him working her into his social circle.
Yeah.
And in the movie, they're kind of like, obviously, she hangs out with us, you know, like because they already established the girls hang out during band practice. So like,
because it's a movie, you kind of just have, she has to be the object of desire, but you don't have the time like you would with the book to really flesh stuff out.
Yeah.
So, and that goes not only for Ramona and like everything that she had been through, but also even for Scott, some of his backstory,
and some of the
his
exes.
parents, Kim.
Oh, Kim's
Kim's
a
big
especially. One. Kim is alluded to in the movie. Yeah. I feel like they even say the thing where I fought 86 guys and I fought one big guy at the end and he shot lasers out of his eyes, you know, like, and he like says that, but in the book you get a whole thing with that, you know, like you actually get to see what he did, you know,
which
like,
is sort of ironic because reading the book again, then going straight into the movie again for the first time in a while, Alison Pill is honestly probably the most faithful.
She's pitch perfect. She's like
look, demeanor, everything is just like on point. So it's funny that she almost slightly gets shafted as far as adaptation wise goes, even though it's wild. Adaptation is a loose term in this context.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny with Kim because they do a lot of scenes like exactly how the books do. Like they're like, oh, but Kim's fine with it, and then they look over at Kim's like, like you're like, they do that in the book, and you're just like, like,
but just little things, stuff like Lucas Lee is my favorite ex in the movie.
Yeah.
In the book, he's kind of nothing.
Yeah.
He's kind of just a normal dude. Just like, Ramona just kind of screwed me over. I'm not really here to start anything.
Yeah, he's kind of chilled back.
But he's the most hilarious thing in the world in the movie. Like,
and this was before Chris Evans was Captain America. Like,
it's interesting. This movie, because it had the 5 years in development, almost everyone was casted like right before they got big.
Yeah. It's weird. It's like, and it's a star-studded cast now. Like, that's the funny thing. Like, but we were watching it the other night. And Mary was like, "Oh, I didn't realize how many big names were in this movie." I'm like, "That's because they weren't big names.
They weren't that just big yet.
They just weren't."
Like they were talking about how they had casted. And he's like, "Oh, I had casted Aubrey Plaza as Julie like right before she had ever gotten the role on Parks and Rec, or before she was ever in Funny People and stuff like that." You're like, "Wow."
And it's wild how many superheroes are in this.
Just like this
you
movie
got Captain America, you got Huntress, you got Aubrey Plaza, who's in that the X-Men show, the Legion show.
Yes,
so you got like a bunch of...
You got Superman.
Yeah, you got Superman.
It's the only movie you'll get where like Superman and Captain America are in the same movie.
Right? You're like, yes.
And it's one of those things where, like, this movie would have been way more expensive if it came out now.
Right? It's one of those things where you're like, you couldn't make this happen the way it happened. Like, you know, like, and I love that. Like, I love a movie that, like, could only happen at that time, you know? Like, it's like a time period piece, you know?
But I feel like with the movie at the end of the day for it's definitely more of sort of like an adventurous, jumpy, funny film. Yeah. Whereas the book is much more of like, no, this is a straight up coming of age story for this cast.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like Brian Lee O'Malley.
Yep.
Okay, so they are trying to be more personal, and that's why the book stands out even above the movie. Like, you know, like I love the movie, and I've seen the movie umpteenth times. Yeah. Like, I watched it the other day just to get a refresher, and I felt like I was saying the jokes before they came on screen. You know, it's one of those things where I realized I had seen this movie way too many times. You know, like, I don't usually rewatch movies, so it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I've seen this a billion times.
It's one of those movies that I'm glad I saw in theaters because it didn't do well.
Yeah, and that's sad because it's one of those things that would be a tentpole now because it's a comic book movie, but this is 2011.
I feel like especially with internet culture now, it would resonate with a lot more people than it would when it first came out.
Yeah, and because of course it's got beautiful references to a bunch of video games and a bunch of
just the whole video game framework of just like defeat my 7 evil exes in order for me to date you.
Right,
and it really leans into that. It's ironic. Like, this film understands video games more than any video game adaptation that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and that's what you have to give to this, is that this might not be a video game adaptation, but this might be the best video game movie. You know,
which is really frustrating.
Which is
not
really
in a bad way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, like, because if we're talking about movies that are about video games, like, or even, like, touch on video games, what do you got? Like, that's better than this. Like, Scott Pilgrim stands above, because it's snappy because of Edgar Wright. It's extremely well directed. It's well written, but also it's just so damn funny. Like,
yeah, and it's such a time capsule.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even looking back at it, the style of what everyone's wearing, like the joke about like, oh, Pirate is in this year. You're like, oh, I remember that fucking year when Pirates were in. You're like, Jesus Christ.
Which is funny because that was sort of a lasting joke I guess pirates were just a thing for like half a decade because that's a joke in the first volume too.
Right?
That came out in 2004. The movie came out in 2010, and that was still like a relevant joke.
Still a super relevant joke. You're like, yeah, it's true though. Like pop punk, like punk was into that, you know. Like, and you're just kind of like, okay, all right. But that's another thing I love about the movie is that not only does it love video games. It also it's something that the book can't do is that the movie loves its soundtrack. Like in the book, you get like a hint at like the band playing and how important music is.
Yeah,
and
they're
playing
all-
bass is to Brian O'Malley.
Yeah, and they tend to like wear like band shirts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like everyone knows like the Plum Tree
so you
shirt
can
and stuff like that.
feel the love for the music in the book, but when you go to the movie, the soundtrack is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Like it's not only that they were able to adapt the songs from the books and make them like a full thing, but they actually have a lot of the people working on the movie working on the songs. Like Sex Bomb is actually Sex Bomb, you know, like, and so is who's plays Envy? I'm forgetting her name at the moment. Captain
Brie
Marvel.
Larson.
Brie Larson actually sings in that song. Like she's actually
they all
singing
had to
that.
like learn how to play the instruments at least competently just for show.
Right, and like, and
Just
that's
for the
pretty damn
authenticity of
cool.
it.
Like that's pretty damn cool. Like that they made her Brie Larson like sing it, you know, like, and she does a great job. I was like, damn, like why aren't they casting her in musical
and then
roles?
even for like fight scenes and stuff like that, they did most of their own stunts.
Yeah.
Like stunts except for like the really dangerous stuff, but they had to like train for like months on end for it, and it shows.
It shows.
And it influenced like Edgar Wright's work from that point on, because that was the first time he had worked with Bill Pope.
Really?
Bill Pope's it's one of those names that you don't hear too often, but when you actually look at his filmography, you're just like, wow, he's had his hand in this a lot. He was the cinematographer for The Matrix, for Spider-Man 2. He did Scott Pilgrim, and then he's pretty much worked with Edgar Wright as a cinematographer since Scott Pilgrim. Like, he did World's End right after that, and he did Baby Driver.
Cinematography in Scott Pilgrim it's astounding. It's one of those things where the camera doesn't move and the backgrounds move, and it's one of those things that you're just like, holy shit, Edgar Wright. It's one of those things that's so uniquely him, you know? Like, the transitions are just so snappy and so well done. Like, constantly, this time I, like, really paid attention to the transitions, and it was really... It's astounding. Like, if you're not paying attention, you would never pick up on this. But the backgrounds change, you know? Like, and it's one of those, like, motifs he's going with, you know? Like, that they have this, like, human gaze out, and then the background changes. And you're kind of like, shit. Like, you know, it's, like, surprising. But if you were a normal viewer, you probably wouldn't even notice it. You would just be like, oh, wow, we're in a different place now. Like,
It's so stylish.
it's so stylish, and that's really it. It's a stylish movie. Like Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz are really stylish movies, but the Scott Pilgrim amps it up.
Yeah,
Like,
and the the fruits of their labor is immediately paid off as soon as you get to the World's End. You're just like, suddenly the fight choreography in these movies just got a lot more intricate, and you're just like, I wonder if he brought over the same choreographers he had on Scott Pilgrim, and he learned a lot from that.
Yeah, right.
Because Hot Fuzz's action scenes are really good, but
they're shooting scenes.
Yeah,
they're shooting scenes,
and they rely on like tropes.
Yeah,
just like
which is funny.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the point.
That's the point.
It's like the shaky cam, the snap zooms, and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's the thing is Edgar Wright loves to be a genre filmmaker, and that's one of his things. He loves to be like, hey, look, I'm doing a zombie film. Hey, look, I'm doing a cop film. Hey, look, I'm doing a. But that's what's so interesting about World's End, Scott Pilgrim, and a few others by him is that they feel so uniquely him. Yeah. Like, you know, like they go from being like, I'm doing a genre to being like, oh, whoa, like this is something different. Like, and that's one of those reasons.
It's like the two turns, like I would say World's End and Baby Driver especially, just the turns that they have.
Man.
You're just like, wow, this turned into something I did not come here for.
Right?
Not that I'm complaining. But I feel like it's one of those things where Edgar Wright, you couldn't have picked a better director with his certain sense of sensibilities for a project like this.
Exactly.
Despite them being so different, whereas the book is more of a character piece.
Yeah.
Because we already brought up Kim and Ramona's backstory, stuff like that. Even stuff like Envy. Like, Envy is way more fleshed out in the book.
Yeah, she is.
And her reasons for, like, leaving Scott. kind of hits real hard. He's just like, yeah, this is just kind of a part of growing, and it sucks, but we all went through it.
And that's what's so great about the book is that it's really real. Like, you know, like you keep saying, it's a slice of life in a really good way. In like you've seen these situations before. You've either lived them or you've seen them, and you're just kind of like, wow.
But the movie, and not to its detriment, is much like lighter entertainment.
Yeah, no, it has to move at a brisk pace. Because it's not going to try to adapt this into several movies.
Even by the end, like, you look at the difference between Gideon himself.
Yeah.
Book versus movie. Like, Gideon in the book is a legitimate manipulative asshole.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movie, he is that too, but he's also kind of a dork, and he's actually fun to watch, whereas, like, Gideon is...
that's also Jason Schwartzman's fault. Like, you know, he's just fun to watch.
He's just too damn charming,
Yeah,
right?
he's too damn charming. It's a little bit his fault, but you're right. In the book, he's mean, you know? Like, and he's really trying to fuck with Scott. And and I might be misremembering this, but in the movie they say it's a microchip on the back of her neck, but in the book it's a ring, correct? It's the green ring on her finger.
No, not necessarily. In the book, it's more just Ramona's kind of trauma at the way he like treated her. So they keep, because the subspace highway is a much bigger thing.
Much
in the book.
bigger thing. It's
And
just
they
like a visual motif in the book, in the movie. You wouldn't even. She says it as a throwaway line in the movie. She's like, "Oh yeah, I use a space highway."
Subspace highway. Blah, 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 blah.
You're kind of like, what?
And as a moviegoer, not having read the book, you're just like, whatever. This movie has a lot of weird stuff. I'll just go for it. But
in the book, it's a thing.
They continue to allude to. You always see this image of like a tall, like built Gideon, like on a throne, and Ramona at his feet, like on a leash. And it's just like,
kind of like a Jabba the Hutt thing.
That's kind of. It's like, that's basically what I was to him, and there's a piece of me that I can't take back.
Yeah.
And I was in a really dark place for that. And it's great stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that delves into that.
Yeah.
And characters are just more characters. I feel like the X's tend to be a little more fleshed out, except for Lucas. Lucas is just more interesting in the movie.
Yeah, and I feel like Matthew Patel also feels like a bigger intro.
A little bit.
In the book. He feels like more like he kind of like they joke about the email in both the book and the movie, but like he kind of explains more in the book. But in the movie, it's very much a joke and like a good way to introduce you to how ridiculous the rest of the X's
just to
are gonna
get
be.
things going.
They're like,
Like
here
I
we go.
said, Envy was more fleshed out. Todd's a little more of an asshole in the book because he's like actively cheating on Envy, and that becomes a thing.
Yeah.
But the twins actually have a little more screen time.
They really do, because the twins kind of actually don't talk in the movie. They just come up and just do their thing.
If I'm going to be honest, because I think that's one of the big points of not necessarily contention, but like, oh, I kind of wish they kept this from the book.
Yeah.
Was the robot stuff with the twins.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, I kind of like the band battle in the movie more.
It's cool, but I do love a good robot fight.
Yeah.
I do love a good robot fight.
I mean, and even the game expands on that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Okay, so when we're talking about the game, of course, we've already said the movie and the book understand games more than most games themselves.
So what
do.
happens when there actually is a game?
And it does extremely well.
So it was...
It's just like it's designed well.
Yeah. It came out to tie in with the film's release, and it didn't suck, for one. That's a miracle and a half.
Yeah,
because you know how these like movie license games go.
Yeah, first off,
just, like, rushed out.
It means that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is one of the top movie licensed games, because that's also a shitty genre you have to rank. Movies about video games, and then games about movies.
So it came out the same month that the film came out. I had gotten it immediately because I'm like, I love this movie. Not even realizing that the game is following the comic specifically. It has like the same art style. And follows like the same arcs. It expands on things to make it more like video gamey, like fights that weren't in the book, just to, you know, just stretch things out to add more stuff. But
and it happens.
Really solid beat 'em up. Lots of replay value. They had
4-player beat 'em up.
Yep,
like,
and they added like other characters as DLC, like Knives.
Yeah, right.
It's like the music was done by an actual established chiptune band, like Anna Managuchi, and I love that soundtrack.
Oh man, the soundtrack's
I actually blasted it while I was rereading the book. I had that on, just on my earphones while I was reading the book again. And just a really solid game.
Yeah.
Good mix-up of, like, different genres. Like,
A good
film
mix
set.
up of different gameplay styles.
Yeah.
Like, sure, it's a beat 'em up, but it has moments where all of a sudden you're playing a different sort of game. Like, at first there'll be a fighting game type scene. Then there's a shoot 'em up scene. Like, and then of course the robot fighting scene.
Yeah, and
like,
you have all like the different settings.
Yes.
So with the first one, you're mostly in town. Then you end up at the bar. You fight Matthew. You go to Lucas Lee. There's this whole film set level, and they're doing like ridiculous stuff. Edgar Wright actually has a cameo in the game.
no
as, like,
way,
the director.
does he?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so
'Cause
cool.
Every time you clear a screen, like the director comes on and tells you to move on with like his megaphone, and it's totally Edgar Wright because it's like the long hair
right.
and the beard.
That's awesome. That's so
But
great.
They mix up like the X fights really well. Like
Yep.
when you fight the twins, you have to like fight them both at the same time. You actually get an achievement if you beat them both simultaneously.
Yeah.
Just like the achievement unlock joke in the actual
Yep.
book. The attention to detail was great. It actually has a full on map. Mr. Chow, Knives' dad, is a hidden boss in the game. It was great.
That's so funny.
But unfortunately, it's gone now.
Yeah.
Like, Ubisoft doesn't
See,
really.
This is a weird thing.
Yeah, Ubisoft doesn't have. I imagine it's because the license
Yeah.
like ran out, but it got pulled from digital stores in like 2014.
Weird.
And so unless you have an old copy, I imagine if you purchase it before, you could still like grab it from your
Yeah.
purchase history. But there's no new way to play the game anymore, and it never had a physical release.
Which is weird. I feel like it's such a great game. It's
one
so
of those things
sad.
where like I wanted to replay the game ahead of this, but
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah, and it's one of those things for me. It's like, why isn't that on Switch? Yeah, I know I'm always saying that.
Yeah.
I'm like, every game comes out, and I'm like, why isn't that on Switch? I'm like,
Depends on the game, Frank.
they're like Last of Us 2, and I'm like, why isn't that on Switch?
Because it would break the
I know.
system in half.
The Switch would be like, well, no, make it snap. Getting off topic.
Yeah, the way they expand on it is fun. One of my favorite things is that they make the Gideon fight like this total like Final Fantasy bullshit.
Yeah, right. Because they allude that he's Sephiroth. They play the Sephiroth music. He's got the big fucking sword.
Yeah, and he has like this huge form where like his other X's are like growing out of him because he's like this cancerous douchebag. And
it's so good.
And that's another thing that they play into is like Gideon is all about just like he just likes the idea of being wanted.
Yeah.
And that's all he cares about.
Yes.
So like the moment that you don't care, that's when he starts to care. And you actually see like in the book that he has like all the girls that thought they could leave me, I have them cryogenically frozen here.
Yeah.
And it's just like
So Gideon's definitely like more of a supervillain. Like in the book, like I feel like he's even like sure he's a douchebag, but he's like a supervillain. Like because in the movie, it's alluded to. Yeah, he's a dick and he formed all the X's together. But in the book, they kind of like talk about that more about how he brings them all together, like kind of like a Super League of Evil, like.
And it's just one of those things where, like, you realize the exit, and that's also part of, like, the growth in the book, is that you realize that, maybe these guys really aren't evil. Maybe it just wasn't the right time, and we're all just kind of growing up.
Yeah.
So we're all just still kind of cooking. But Gideon's a legitimate threat and not a great guy.
It's true, and that's what I think is interesting about the everything about it is the X's. A lot of them are really old, like far away exes, like Matthew Patel when they were really,
Just
really
like,
young.
Whatever. We dated once. We like kissed once. Whatever. But stuff like Roxy was just a phase. But like Roxy actually sticks around in the books a little bit.
Yeah.
Like she even rooms with Ramona for a while, but nothing happens. They're like trying to work it out, but of course it doesn't work out.
And it's one of those things that it goes through like kind of all these relationships people have in their lives, and some of the bad choices that you can make, and sure Ramona's made more than a few, but doesn't make her any less of a person, like it makes her more of a person because she learns more, like
and it's not like Scott's innocent
Yeah,
either.
right?
I mean, I feel like
Scott's an interesting character because they start right off that you want to right off. It's Michael Cera. You're supposed to like him, but he starts, the first shot is Scott Pilgrim is now dating a high schooler, and you're kind of like, douchebag, like right off the bat, and then he says some douchebaggy things like
he
right
does.
away.
He comes off sort of as more of an asshole in the movie. I would feel like he's still a dick in the book, but he's just still kind of naive, and just doesn't know what he wants to do with himself. And with the time that the book has to develop them, you have the chance to like really flesh out that character arc, whereas with everything compressed in the movie, everything kind of has to be streamlined, so he just comes off as a little more dickish in the movie.
Yeah, he does. And it's not really... And I think they did it on purpose. Like they want you to like Scott, but they want you to understand Scott also. They want you to be able to take a step back far enough away from your hero to be like, oh, Scott's flawed. You know, like, and that's some people don't like that shit. I don't know why. Some people want their white knight heroes.
I was actually going to bring that up. Like, you read my mind.
It's weird.
There is like a good chunk of like general audiences that are really against like unlikable protagonists.
Which is
just
so
like,
strange. Like,
guys,
I don't...
people are people.
Yeah, I don't get it. And especially, I kind of hate it when people are straight up goody good guys who go and do the goody good.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
of course
like,
sometimes it depends on the context
but
of like
even,
what type of
even
thing
if
you're
we're
trying
talking
to tell
about
you.
the stereotype, we're talking Luke fucking Skywalker. Luke's a fucking whiny bitch.
Yeah.
Like, there's reasons not to like Luke. Like, and they do that on purpose because they want you to be like, Luke's a good guy, but he's gonna make some fucking bad decisions.
The character's so unlikable. Why should I root for an unlikable character? It's like, yeah, because there's a point. If you would just sit down and shut up for a sec. But I think that also just kind of falls into the same sort of umbrella of like entertainment as art versus just escapism.
Yeah, exactly. Like some people will go into the movie and just want to see Optimus Prime rip up some fucking robots.
Yeah, it's just like,
and be good.
There's so many depressing things in the world. I don't want to come to movies to be sad. I just want to escape for a sec. He's like, yeah, which is fine. That's valid, but you have to understand that there's more to that medium than just that.
Yeah, exactly. This is an art form. Like, come on, get together. But I feel like there is. It's amazing that. Not only are all three of these adaptions good, but they also do a good job at kind of complementing each other.
And it just makes me sadder because it's like a triple whammy of just like good comic, good movie, good tie-in video game, which never fucking happens.
Never happens.
And you're just like, and none of you guys went to go see it? I know the game did pretty well, but it's like, what do you got? Would you guys get off your asses? This is the exact same thing. It's just like, oh, they don't make any good movies or original movies anymore.
Like, and sure, you can say that this is an adaptation.
Yeah, it's an adaptation, but
it's
just one of those things where like it has such an interesting premise, something that you would have never have seen before. It's like, but I guess you went to go see The Expendables instead.
Yeah, it's like, and it's funny because we have like coming this year, we have Free Guy. The one where the guy Ryan Reynolds is playing a NPC in a video game, and it's like, and it's funny because that's sort of similar to this, where it's like we're living in a video game world, but immediately I think that Free Guy is going to be kind of like, we're going to make a bunch of video game jokes, and it's going to be like,
yeah, it's going to be. It seems like it's going to be super ham-fisted, and like the novelty will wear off in like the first 20 minutes.
Exactly, kind of like Ready Player One, where you're kind of like, wow, this is so cool looking, but fucking what? Like, you're just like, did I just see a fucking Teenage Ninja Turtle run by me? What the fuck was that?
Once like the member berries wear off, you're just like, eh.
But that's the reason why Scott Pilgrim stands out, is that it has something a little bit deeper inside.
Yeah, it's not completely relying
on the video games.
Yeah.
And that's what's great. I already said it. It relies on the video games, its love of music, and then it's got great characterization.
It uses it as a foundation to tell an interesting story.
Yeah.
Something that would have been so cliched, because you could have any old like romantic comedies. It's like, oh, it's funny. I kind of have 7 exes. You're going to have to deal with them.
Yeah.
But by putting in like the video game framework, making it more coming of age, you create something new from it.
Yeah.
And what I love is that it doesn't have to lean on the video game stuff to be good, which has been sort of my problem with video game adaptations up until now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to go on a huge soapbox about it, but you like Detective Pikachu.
I do like Detective Pikachu.
I'm not a big fan of it. If you take out the fact that it's Pokemon, this is a nothing movie. And it's one of those things where, like...
But that's kind of the point of that movie, is my argument to that.
You could take other movies, take the aspect of it out, and it would still stand up on its own. If you replace Detective Pikachu with just, like, some generic, like, alien or something...
It would just be kind of a cliche 90s
you would
alien
see
movie.
it for exactly what it is.
All right.
It's in the same way that like the new Sonic movies, it's like, oh, this is every like bad like road trip cop bullshit that I've seen, but it happens to have Sonic in it. It's just like, well, I want more than just like a paint by number story that you gave in that you just pasted something I like into it to try and make it better and sell me on it. It's not going to work for me.
Yeah, I feel that. But I can see also on the executive side, they're like, well, I want a bankable thing like a cop buddy movie, and then let's shove Sonic in, and it will work. Like, I'm not defending the Sonic movie or anything, but I will defend Detective Pikachu a little bit in that the point of that movie is the Pokemon, like sure Sonic's being thrown into that, but the point of Detective Pikachu is that it is in the Pokemon world, like that's my only argument for that is that it's a difference between being like Sonic came to our world to being like we are completely in this fantasy aspect, like because it is a fantasy aspect. Because you wouldn't call Pokemon sci-fi, like like it's a fantasy story.
Yeah, it's kind of both.
It's kind of both because they have sci-fi elements. We put them in little balls. How's that work?
Little boss and like Mewtwo being like a clone and stuff like that. There's sci-fi elements.
There's sci-fi elements, and I think they do that to be like it's not weird, but it's we won't talk about Detective Pikachu anymore.
Yeah, that's why I said I didn't want to like rant about it. But you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I exactly know what you mean because you're kind of
because
right.
If you took out the video game elements of Scott Pilgrim, it would change the film a lot. But I still feel like you'd still have a solid movie in its own respect without it.
True. And I feel like also there's just a lot to love with the cast here. I feel like we haven't talked enough about Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Winstead, sorry. I loved her before this movie, and this movie forever fucked me up.
I think the first time I had ever noticed her in something and like remembered her, of all things, is probably like Final Destination 3.
Yeah, right.
Which isn't good, but I'm like, I like her. And then like Live Free or Die Hard is like,
yeah, right.
I like her.
Yeah, that's right.
And then like Scott Pilgrim was the same thing. It's like, I will never forget you.
And yes, I apologize to all the women who forever got dudes like neckbeards going after them because they sort of had dyed hair.
They remind them as like Ramona and stuff like that.
But they don't deserve that.
But that's also like the misinterpretation of the entire point of the story.
Exactly. It's like the Joker or anything else.
It's like people
that.
idolizing like Joker and
or
Harley
Breaking
as a
Bad.
couple, or Breaking Bad. Like you're missing the point entirely.
Exactly. Like, and that is like here with Scott
But that
Pilgrim.
kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah, it does. It does come with the territory.
There's going to be meatheads who like completely miss the point.
They're like, what?
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to like this type of girl because of all these reasons?
So, I mean, you can like that type of girl, but you're supposed to be in there for more than just aesthetic.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I think they're saying something there, like it's like...
Yeah, because the whole thing is sort of a power fantasy, but it also peels back the skin in the same way it's like in the movie, but especially in the book. And like there's the movie doesn't have that big confrontation with Knives and Scott where Knives legitimately tells him, it's like, no, you were kind of an asshole to me.
Yeah. And that's I feel like that's rough.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's also scenes in the book where Scott and Ramona have more real moments.
Yeah, their relationship is more feasible to me in the book because we actually see not just the drama, them fighting, the exes, stuff like that, the drama between them, will this work out? But the book just has them just hanging out and at the house all day, actually going on dates, enjoying each other's company. Like you get more straight up relationship stuff. Yeah. But that's kind of comes with the territory of like book versus
to a
movie.
Cinematic adaptation.
But which is interesting. I feel like it's weird that we haven't had like a series adaptation yet.
Yeah.
We did have Scott Pilgrim versus the animation back in the day.
Yeah.
Which just adapts that piece from Volume 2 where he like started dating Kim.
Right.
And it was really well done. Michael Cera came back to voice Scott. Allison Pill voiced Kim. And you almost felt like they were doing it to see if it was like a sort of sneaky pilot.
To
see if we could do like
show.
an animated series, and I would be down for that.
I'd be
I'm
so
surprised
down.
it hasn't happened yet.
Because Brian Leo Malley, am I saying the name wrong again?
Saying it.
Okay. he's gotten even bigger since, you know, like so it's one of those things where you're kind of like, you could do a TV show, like
It was
an animated one.
the
Like,
same
I feel like Netflix is sleeping on that.
Yeah, the same studio that worked on Scott Pilgrim versus the animation is actually working with Netflix right now
Of
for
course.
something else, and everyone made the joke. They're just like, you guys did Scott Pilgrim versus the animation. Do the right thing here.
do the right thing.
Do the right thing
Do
here.
the right thing. It's like, and in a world where we have also the other best video game adaptation, Castlevania, the animated series. If you want to argue with us about that, fucking find us on Twitter, bitch.
You want to talk video game adaptations? I have very little to complain about with the Castlevania
Yes,
series.
exactly.
I will say that.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is that we're living in a world where we have to be like, oh, that wasn't terrible.
Yeah, and there's such an emphasis on TV now, like more so than it was like back
Yeah.
in 2010. Damn well, especially back with like 2005 when like the book first came out.
Yeah.
So
we're living in a world with Disney Plus, Hulu, and
So we live
and
in a world
Netflix,
where
Amazon.
people will look at source material and say, you know what, this might be better off as a series than it would be a movie.
Yeah. And that's not a bad, like, I feel that. I feel that deep because it's a great movie. Like, a literal cornerstone of, like, my life and also in my top 100 movies. Like, no
And-
question. Like,
It's like, and you can't complain about like the difference.
No.
Like they were made around the same time. Brian Lee O'Malley was a huge consultant on the movie. He was very open to changes. He says he prefers the idea that the book and the movie are kind of their own thing.
Yeah.
For the most part, Edgar Wright made the joke that he's like the anti-Alan Moore. Where it's just like, where he'll actually willingly be involved and he doesn't care what changes you make.
yeah, right? You're like, wait, what? And that's, oh my God, that's so true in this day and age, you know? Like, when people are just taking Alan Moore stuff and doing it, and Alan Moore's like, I fucking hate you all. Like,
Yeah, but that's Alan Moore. Alan Moore just like, that's just an umbrella
Yeah.
thing for Alan Moore. He just doesn't care what gets adapted. He's just against adaptations, period.
Yeah. And there's a lot of writers that are against it, you know, like, and I don't blame them. There's a lot of shit out there, you know, like, and I can't, like, and we got like, what, we got Bloodshot coming out next week or something like that, and that's probably going to be shit, right?
I only saw the trailer for that because it was attached when I went to go see the My Hero Academia movie
there
a
you
couple
go.
days ago because I had no business watching a Bloodshot trailer. I wasn't going to go out of my way for it. Yeah, it looks stupid. It looks fun stupid.
It
though.
does
It
look
looks
fun.
more fun than I would have thought.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's Vin Diesel being blown apart and then pulled back together, you know, like, yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Like, you're like, all right. Like,
It's not much. Not really a hard sell.
yeah, okay. But yeah, it's one of those things where we're living in an age where comic books and video games are being adapted all the time. And way back when in 2011, when did Scott Pilgrim come out? 2010. They got it right. It more than right. You know, like they were able to adapt a book, a movie, and a video game, and they're all great. Like, unquestionably. Like,
Now, if only you guys had supported it when it came out. Because there was initially sort of talks back when the film was first being developed of maybe making it a multi-part series as opposed to covering the entire range of volumes in one go. But they were unsure like how well the movie would do, so they decided to play it safe and do it for one movie, and I guess they were right. Because if they tried to leave out for a sequel, we probably wouldn't have gotten the
we wouldn't have
completion
got
of
it. Yeah. And I feel like you got to look at movies like Series of Unfortunate Events with Jim Carrey. You know, like they try to shove multiple books into one thing and they messed up and then we get none of it. You know, like, and that's almost more sad than shoving it all together and it working. You know,
I
like,
still
you know,
haven't
like,
watched the Netflix series.
It's good.
I've
It's
heard
real
really
good.
good.
It's
I just
really
haven't
good.
watched it yet.
I like the book series. I didn't finish it, but I really did enjoy it. Like I think we were on the third season, and it was.
But that's kind of the thing. Like even like the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
Like we had 3 movies, and then it just kind of petered out. But I guess they're just going to do a series adaptation of it now.
Really?
Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
the idea.
All right. I mean, that makes sense. It's one of the biggest book series of all time. Amazon or Apple or somebody had to pick it up. I think Apple picked it up, right? It's Apple.
I know someone got
with
it.
their Lord of the Rings series.
I know it's
and
not
something
Amazon
else.
because Amazon has Lord of the Rings, and Amazon's also doing the Wheel of Time adaptation.
You sure it's Amazon doing the Wheel of Time, or is it
Yeah, they're doing the Wheel of
Apple?
Time.
Okay, all right, cool. I'm cool with that. I already got Amazon.
But what a pull.
Yeah, right.
Not only do you have like the biggest fantasy book of all time, you have like the second, the second biggest as well, because Wheel of Time's so big.
It's so large.
Just like, oh, we just cornered the market. Fuck.
Fuck it. We'll take it all the way. After Netflix with Witcher, they're probably like, shit.
What else we got?
What else we got? I mean, with Game of Thrones and then Witcher working too, it's like, I'm sure the rest of them are just like, is that a fantasy novel? Give me that shit. Like I need that now. But guys, if you haven't seen Scott Pilgrim
or played, even though it would be very hard to be able to play it now.
It'll be a little bit harder, but I've seen some crack copies. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying they're out there.
Support the official release, but you know, when it's hard to, a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
Man's got to do what a man's got to do. Captain, they're talking about pirates. But also check it out, and also check us out. Check out all our stuff. The Warp Shelf has a Facebook page. We each have Twitters. Mine's Yep Frank.
Mod Karika.
And we all, which you can tweet us. We'll tweet right back most of the time, unless you belligerent. No, I'm just kidding. We'll still tweet at you. Tweet at us, you belligerent fucks.
I like to poke the bear all the time. I'm the guy who reads YouTube comments and like tries to start stuff. I'm that guy because it's so fun, which is good because I feel like it makes me thick-skinned. So whenever like my actual creative endeavors hopefully pay off and people are just like, your stuff sucks, I'm just like, nah, you suck.
No, you suck. Why are you booing at me? I've seen what makes you boo.
It's like, your boos mean nothing to me. I've seen what makes you cheer.
So thank you guys for tuning in. Check out our stuff, and please check out Scott Pilgrim, because it's one of those things that it's just, if you missed it.
Yeah, and there
sad.
are brand new, nice colored hardcovers that came out now.
See, that's the real reason why we're talking about it. It took us all this time to talk about it, but Deshaun got those nice colored
hardcovers, which is great because I wanted to get the entire book series like a long time ago, but just never got around to it. So by the time I did get around to it, just like, oh, colored and hardcover, great.
And they look so nice.
Yeah,
they're gorgeous. Like they're one of those things that you're like, damn. Like, but guys, thank you again, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
We'll see you next time.